is January 7th, and this is our first curriculum meeting of 2021. Happy New Year to everybody. And tonight we'll have Ms. Clark, Ms. Burr, Dr. Wiley, and Mr. Day be presenting. And I'd like to thank you all for your flexibility to get this meeting in place, as it's been postponed a couple times. So to all of you, thank you for being cooperative with that. And I look forward to a good meeting tonight. So number 2, roll call. We have Joyce Hall is on the call. Bill Salazar is not in attendance, but we'll call in if he gets a chance. Michelle Middleton, Megan Burr, John Day, Aaron Clark, and Dr. Wiley. So we'll move to number 3, example of social and civic expectation lessons presented by Aaron Clark and Megan Burr.
Before they start committee, I just want to let you know that Ms. Clark has another appointment at 6 o'clock. So if she disappears, that's why. So just let you know. We have her until 6. So thank you.
All right, thank you, Michelle. And thanks for having us back to the subcommittee. Just to review from the last meeting, you know, at the last meeting, we spoke a little bit about the work we started at the high school to ensure all our students have the skills they need to talk about race in a safe and productive way. One of our most important charges as high school administrators is to promote a positive school climate. And as you know, we need to provide our students awareness of other cultures, awareness of how to speak civilly to other students. And most ignorant or racist acts do not come out of malice, they come out of ignorance. And we have a duty to educate. So we had discussions with the curriculum office about how to improve our curriculum. And we shared last time kind of a broad overview of what that curriculum work was. And today we're presenting just a more specific example for you so you can see what that looks like.
Thank you, Erin. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and pull up the sample lesson that we chose.
Joyce, can you hear?
I can hear.
Okay, good.
Can you all see my screen?
Just barely.
Let me see if I can zoom in a bit. Is that better?
That's better.
Okay. So Erin started talking about what we already shared at the last meeting, but just to reiterate the purpose of these social and civic expectation lessons, there are a few purposes, but we talked a lot, or we shared a lot about supporting community building in the classroom, so that positive classroom environments could be created, and that would help to develop and support positive school climate as well. And we looked at exploring topics related to primarily identity, diversity, and culture. So that's the big picture of this work. And then what we did is we went through the lessons and we chose one that we thought really exemplifies the goals of what we're doing here. So we chose a lesson that's taught in grade 9 in English classrooms, and I'll just review. This is the lesson plan template, obviously, but I'll just give you a big picture overview of the lesson, and then I'll go through the different pieces and obviously answer any questions anyone might have. So the big focus of this lesson is on identity, and more specifically, it's on conflicting identities. And the goal is really for students to build awareness of one another's differences and respect for those differences. So the primary learning task for this lesson centers around a poem, and students examine a poem with those themes in order, again, to develop an understanding of different identities and then connect it to their own and those of their classmates. So in walking you through what we have here with the template, and please, I can't see any of you since I'm sharing my screen. So please just let me know, jump in if there are questions or if I'm going too quickly. So you'll see the template just starts with the learning objective, which essentially is what I just summarized. It's in the form of an I will statement, so a student-friendly objective. I will feel and be an active member of a safe and welcoming class culture that respects diversity while building awareness of identity. So again, those big overarching themes are built right into the learning objective, and students are examining what factors shape who they are, and then what ways do I see myself versus how others see me. So they're looking at misconceptions around identities as well, which is part of the learning task, which you'll see as I scroll. So something we discussed when Erin and I came to the last meeting was about how these social and civic expectation lessons are centered around those standards, but that they're also, we're also embedding Connecticut core standards into these lessons. So that's why you see that you have the supporting Connecticut core standards for literacy, reading information, reading literature, and speaking and listening are listed there. And then jumping into the learning task. So this basically walks through, so the teachers who developed these lessons have several learning tasks that are, very explicit for teachers to help them as they're implementing these lessons. So I'll just walk you through what we have on here for learning tasks, and I'll give you a little overview of the poem as well so you can see the connection. So they would start this lesson as part of these mini units. They develop ground rules and norms on day one. So the first piece would just be to revisit that. We shared with you as well that one of the goals is about effective civil discourse. So that's a big part of what those norms would center on. They would review the work from the prior day. So that's just to start. And then they start looking at some of those big concepts that are covered in this lesson. So for this one, you have named out here labels, intersectionality, and stereotypes. So again, they're going to start diving into different identities, conflicting identities. They first start by examining that in relation to themselves before jumping into the poem. So the first task that teachers are asking students to do is reflect on their own identity and to name out 2 positive traits about their race or identity as a whole or about themselves. And then what's one misconception that they think other people have about whatever piece of their identity they're naming, essentially.
And that is before reading the poem.
Before reading the poem, right.
Okay.
So they're starting by making a personal connection and reflecting on their personal identities. And then, and Erin's going to talk a little bit more about this next one. She did some work around this, but it's building off some things they were doing at Enfield High. So Erin, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, so this activity, the 5th bullet down, we actually did this. We were trained by CREC, and they did a 2-day workshop with us. We had 10 teachers trained in how to facilitate civil discourse. And a key element of building community in the classroom is sharing your unique identities in a safe way. So this was a really powerful activity that we did with students. We piloted it. I think we did 4 separate rounds of civil discourse circles last year. The kids really benefited from them. So the teachers who were trained in that civil discourse training used that knowledge to bring it back to this curriculum writing. So it's really great for identifying stereotypes and making students aware of different stereotypes without reinforcing them.
Thank you, Erin. So from there, now that students have had a chance to examine their own identity a bit, they jump into the poem.
Can I just ask it? So with the, if you go up just a little bit more, yeah, with the 2 positive traits about race and identity and 1 misconception. So that could also be how a person views themselves, not necessarily on a race basis, but more from an individual aspect. as
Yeah,
well?
that's a great question. So they're not just looking at race, they're looking at gender, class, religion, sexual orientation. So yes, not just
Okay,
race.
gotcha.
Yeah. So it
Would
could
would
be
shy be an identity that they might use?
I
I think it would be more a group of people you would associate with. So
Right.
I think shy would be more of a characteristic. Typical examples would be, like Megan said, gender, your religion, your ethnicity, your maybe sexual identification, however you identify. And that this activity allows you to say two things you're proud of with your identity. So it helps communicate pride in who you are, but also to expose, like, you've heard something hurtful about your identity before. You've heard that women are weak or something that has bothered you that's a stereotype.
So it's more about the social group as a whole versus the individual personality traits. So the name of the poem that students are looking at is called Two Names, Two Worlds, and the speaker's name is Jonathan Rodriguez, and he is essentially reflecting on first his name, but all of the many aspects of his identity, all the things that make him who he is, but some of which might be conflicting, both for himself, but also for how others see him. So I'm just going to read you just, that's a big picture. I'm just going to read one line from the poem so you can get an idea of this whole idea of the conflicting identities being expressed. So he says, I am African, Taino, and Spanish, a fanboy, an athlete, a nerd, a student, an introvert. So again, he's just naming out all these different aspects of who he is, and specifically he's talking about his ethnicity there.
So then instead of using shy, I could have used introvert and you would have accepted it?
Well, that the whole poem, this isn't just about his social identities. He is talking about both who he is, the social groups he belongs to, but then also who he is as a person.
I'm just trying to clarify what you're expecting on those identity stickers.
So when teachers do this, they model first for students, and they would explain that they're looking at students, the different social groups they belong to.
You would not be penalized, though, if you happen to say a character trait. But yes, you would prioritize the social group.
So students are reading the poem, they're reading it aloud together. They're looking at this idea of intersectionality. So again, these different, belonging to multiple groups, having these multiple identities. And then they're thinking about these different categories that they place themselves in the previous activity. They're reflecting on that a little bit more. And then they're analyzing the poem. So they would break into groups, and they're doing it, they're calling it a think, pair, share strategy in small groups. So basically they're jigsawing out. There are 5 questions. Students are first thinking about it and pairing up to reflect on it and answer the questions before sharing out with the whole class. So there's 5 text-dependent questions. Each group would be assigned one of those questions to work on together. And then to close the lesson, they're coming back together to share out their responses with the whole class so that everyone sees what the other groups worked on. And then they're completing an exit slip at the end where they're reflecting on the lesson concepts in relation to themselves.
So is that exit slip actually revisiting the earlier Post-it notes?
They're looking at specifically how the concept of intersectionality affects them. So they're going a little bit farther than that initial task where they're just first thinking about their identities, but then they're thinking about the impact of it.
I have a general question, not necessarily specifically about this, but as I understand it, we're going to be expected to include a course on, I believe, a group of different minorities in a single curriculum that the state is developing. And it is currently, I guess it has been completed as far as written is concerned, and it will be available for the 21-22 year, but will be mandatory in the 22-23. Now, that is covering sort of history about the various groups as I understand it. And what impact will having that very general minority review kind of thing, what impact will it have on this type of course? Will you modify it perhaps to bring in something different? Just curious, not sure how it's going to work.
So that is you're correct. It's called Black and Latino Studies, and it will live in the social studies department. So it is a history course. It will be a senior course elective. So it's
And
not
it's going to be senior.
It's the state developed the course with seniors as the target audience.
Seems a little late.
Yeah, and that
Like-
was
like-
actually one of the in the meeting, the last meeting I attended on it. That was actually one of my concerns when I heard that it's really geared towards seniors. It's not written even as a grades 9 through 12 elective, so that a student in any grade could take it. The content then is a little more sophisticated, and although we haven't seen it in full, will probably not be appropriate for underclassmen. So, and it is just an elective course. So if students opt to take it, they can.
And Ms. Hall, that exactly what you're saying is why we felt it was important to do this in the 9th grade and 10th grade curriculum, to make sure our students early on in their high school career have an understanding of respecting different cultures and how to engage in civil conversations with people who may be different from them. So really important that it's not just an elective they take their senior year. That is a little too late, I agree.
And these lessons do start in 6th grade. They're obviously really more focused on basic ideas around identity. But when we talked to you all last time, we shared that we do have lessons for grades 6, 7, and 8 as well. So it's meant to be across the grade levels. And also too, it's exploring, again, not from a historical sense, but for students to make personal connections about one another's identities and learning more about their classmates, so that they can engage in these difficult conversations, essentially.
Which sounds much more useful than this history class that I was referring to and you were talking about. So somebody's got the wrong message here. We really need to start in kindergarten. Oh, no, pre-K. And I suspect in pre-K it would not be a problem because they'll get along because they're just kids.
You're right there.
Just a couple more questions. The first being, if you ever viewed how this is, run in a classroom, do you get willing participants in these activities from the students? And then the second question would be just to clarify for the community, as the last meeting wasn't on YouTube or televised, how far this program outreaches. I mean, you gave a great example of the poem in 9th grade, but this is on a much grander scale across our district. So if you could just summarize that real quick as well.
I can say just one example. Erin can talk a little bit more about the classrooms that she's been in, but despite it being a little more difficult for students to engage in conversations like that when they're doing it on a computer screen, it's obviously more comfortable when you're doing it in the classroom with your peers. One of the classes I sat in on for one of these lessons, the kids were so engaged in the conversation around it that the block ended and it went into lunch. And probably 3/4 of the class stayed on for 15 minutes into their lunch block to continue the conversation. So that's just one class I was in where I saw a really high level of student engagement.
Yeah, Mr. LeBlanc, you're absolutely right. This is part of a larger effort. So we had pilots in 9th grade and 10th grade and almost all those social studies and English courses. So smaller pilots, starting small, trying to tweak this, improve. And Mr. Sine, the social studies coordinator, collected data, and the students reported a high level of engagement. What I know of being a former history teacher myself, the students want to talk about these issues and they want a safe place to process what's going on in the world around them. And we just want to make sure everyone's doing it in the proper way. So we've seen pretty good success with the pilot and we're going to tweak, but the student feedback's been really positive.
So it is being implemented as we speak in some class somewhere. Or are you able to do it in remote situations?
Yes, they are still implementing the lessons remotely.
I think this is great. I love hearing that, and that the student involvement is on a active participation basis, on a volunteer basis as well, and that the students are engaged. That's great to hear, because sometimes it's things we as adults tell ourselves we need to do all the time, and we have a hard time doing it. But it's good to hear that the students and the younger generations are seeming to be a little bit better at it. So that's encouraging.
And I apologize, I do have to run, but thank you for your time this evening. It was nice speaking with you all.
Thank you, Ms. Clark.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Any other questions for Megan on this topic while we have her here, while we're on it? Thank you, Ms. Burr. You can stay, you can go, whatever. Thank you very much for presenting. And please thank Ms. Clark again for me.
Okay. Bye, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Burr. Thank you, Ms. Clark. Alrighty, number 4, we have supplementary middle school music resource, which will be presented by Dr. Wiley.
Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. A short presentation. All right, so I think you're seeing yourselves at this point.
Mm-hmm.
Are you now seeing the 7th and 8th grade band supplementary middle school PowerPoint?
Yes, sorry.
Okay, that's okay. All right, great. Okay, so I'm here to present a new resource for us to implement in 7th and 8th grade band. And to just give a reminder of kind of in the simplest sense, what the instructional goals and objectives are of those courses. The first and foremost, or for 2 of them, first and foremost, it's to develop the playing and performance skills of the band, the large group in general, through the large group and small group experiences. So, but then also, it's also to develop each student's individual playing and performance skills of their chosen instrument. So with those 2 in mind, the current resource that we have is Tradition of Excellence. It's a very comprehensive resource that supports the development needed for the large group ensemble performances. And then when the teachers are then also working with the students individually to develop the skills that they need for their individual instruments, they've been in the past pulling from a lot of different resources to find the unique kind of sequenced experiences that the students need in order to develop their skills with those instruments that they've been pulling from a lot of different places. And really what happened as a result of the current situation that we're in, and in terms of the COVID guidelines, we had to shift really more this year to developing those individual skills with those resources. We have not had as much opportunity, if any at all, to have any large group ensemble performances. So as the teachers were working through it in this new situation, they realized that the resources that we had, while they've been helpful in the past, if there was something out there that could benefit them and their students, they wanted to look for that. And after reviewing a bunch of different resources, they found that this one particular resource, which happened to be new, so it's actually something that has come out very recently, had really all of the different things that they've been trying to pull from in terms of all the different exercises that are needed for the different types of instruments and all of the individual skills that they need. It comes individually in a workbook for each student, so that as they're going through, the students are able to develop those individual skills. And the great thing about this one particular resource is that the way that it's developed, even though it's working with the individual instruments, it has the ability to also bring it together with a large ensemble as well. So it really kind of ties together a lot of the things that they've been looking for in one text, instead of having to look through multiple texts to find what they need for each student. So the cost at this point in time, there are 120 students that span the 7th and 8th grade band. It's $9.95 per student. So we've gotten a quote that estimates that it would be about $1,230, and including shipping. Mark Rapucci is really good at making sure he covers all bases. There is enough in our music supply line to cover the cost at this current moment. So we're really just proposing this and looking for your approval so that we can start using it as a resource with the students. So that's my very short presentation. If you have any questions, I will take.
You mentioned workbooks. Is this
Yeah.
one something that would be needed to be purchased every year for individuals because they are using them?
It is. Yes, it is technically a consumable resource. So each student, depending on which instrument they have, we will make sure we're purchasing the work text that goes with that particular instrument. So the 7th graders, in theory, would be able to use it for the 2 years that we have it. And again, we're implementing it this year because we're seeing the need that due to COVID and the way that we were able to find something that brings all of those pieces together. I would anticipate that it could be something that's useful in the future, but again, we'd have to evaluate how successful it is in implementing. So it's really, I don't want to say that all these things haven't been a need in the past, but this situation has put us in a place where we've been able to look out and find something that is more efficient and maybe perhaps more effective than pulling from different resources. So
when you pulled from different resources, how did you provide the information to the students?
It typically, you mean in the past?
Yes, in the past.
They would find different information from different texts, and they would give it out to the students, essentially, just like we would do in any other class.
So they'd be making copies and providing
Yes.
it that way?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so we've got the same kind of cost involvement, really.
Yes. Yep. Yep.
So it sounds like it would be an asset for sure.
As it was presented to me and described, it seems like it would be. I think the way that Mark put it, it's like a glue. It'll be like a glue that takes a lot of what they do and puts it all together. So whereas the Tradition of Excellence book supports the larger group and playing the similar skills, or in order to play similar skills within the performance that they're doing, this one helps to develop the individual skills necessary, but then it also has a way such that the music that's provided in it can also be played in the larger group. So it can support both, essentially.
Like I said, sounds like an asset, something you really could use.
Yep.
It does. We have found some opportunities this year through all of this. Yeah, we've tried. We're trying to look on the bright side.
So I would support this without a doubt.
Thank you.
Likewise. Just out of curiosity, you brought up how there's 120 students in this school year's band and whatnot at the middle school level. Is that what are the normal numbers on a given year? Is that relative?
It does
Or has
change.
COVID impacted it a little bit?
It does change each year, and the way that it looks this year is different. I would say that that's close to what it is normally each year. Obviously, we've already been talking about what we may need to do for how to keep students interested for next year, how to keep them, we've already been having those conversations. We start in 5th grade with beginning band. We started talking about things that we can do to in the beginning of next year to get students interested, to keep them interested. So yes, it is pretty normal, but we are keeping in the back of our mind that we're going to have to work hard, just as we are in every other aspect of at putting the pieces back together and keeping things going. So.
Definitely, yeah. I mean, because I look at it, from the perspective of, you said the key word, keeping the interest. I mean, a huge part of it is concerts and performing, and unfortunately that stuff has been taken away this year, but going into the future, and when that stuff is able to come back, I think be great for the students if we could even get those numbers up from 120. So
yeah.
And then you answered my second question of how we could use this resource going into the future, and I think it'd be beneficial to get a report back once this school year is finished on how you thought this particular resource went, and if it's something that could be explored into the future as well, into the school years beyond this year. So I support it 100%.
Absolutely. Just one comment to go with what you are saying. When speaking with Mark today, he's very passionate about making sure that we are doing everything that we can to keep student interest going and to get as many students involved as we possibly can. And he said, he commended the staff and how hard they're working to collaborate and keep students, I'm going to use the word again, interested in all of this. But he said it's kind of like eating dinner through a computer screen. You can see it, but you don't get that full experience. So we're all very well aware of, of the needs that we have, and we're going to work hard once we have the ability to actually be able to taste that dinner, right? So.
However, music is a little different because you can hear it.
That's true. Yes, that's true. So, well, thank you all very much.
Well, much appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions for Carrie before she decides to vacate the meeting, I'm sure? Thank you, Carrie. Thank you very much.
Have a great night, everybody.
Righty. Number 5, additional business resource for virtual learning, and that's presented by John Daig.
All right, thank you. So I'm going to be just sharing a supplemental business resource that is something we can be using across the business and marketing departments. This year, the teachers have been teaching through a variety of different modes. They have their hybrid students, full distance students, and students who are, and we've had all of them remote for a period of time. What they were looking for is a resource to help with online course content and to enhance some of the activities and concepts in their existing course curriculums. So they found in looking through this Business U resource that would offer kind of some enrichment and remediation activities for the remaining year. Teachers have been working hard to make engaging lessons for all of their classes. This is another opportunity to increase that through a variety of activities that the students can complete online and can lead into deeper discussion and understanding of business and marketing concepts. We were able to include this in our Perkins grant. We haven't purchased it yet, but it is approved through there. They would pay for the 4 licenses for this first year through that grant. The system is actually fairly user-friendly. Basically, when the teacher logs in using their teacher code, they have some pre-identified courses. So principles of marketing, management, principles of finance, advanced marketing, entrepreneurship, advanced entrepreneurship, business and marketing essentials, personal finance, sports marketing, and so on. Once they get into these courses, they're given an overview which gives them the content for each of those sections and their ability to go in and select which activities, lessons they would like to use by just clicking the slider. I'm not able to share too much through here. We haven't purchased the product because we're online. I'll just give some brief samples. One of the activities is just an ethics case study. And it gives them, the teacher, kind of the overview, the objectives that they would have, the activity itself, kind of the reading for it, and then it gives a series of references to standards, practices, case law, texts, and so on for it, for planning the activity. What the student would see in their LMS is a learning management system is they would see their case study and they would be reviewing it, completing their response for it. The teacher would get those back, and then each of these activities would kind of tie into their next piece. So their discussion guide would be the next activity. So the students could be doing things like looking at a case study, seeing their responses, and then using that to launch into the next activity for discussion around it, why they thought this decision was an ethical or one or not, what implications or the things would it have. So for each of the courses, they would be providing an additional resource that they could use online that would support their existing curriculum for the remainder of this year and the beginning of next year.
So this is a full, you're purchasing a curriculum complete.
It is a complete curriculum, but we're not using it in that way. We'd be selecting pieces that would enhance existing activities, units in the courses. We're not looking to supplant.
Is it essentially an online bit for the students?
It has an online component for the students, yes. So if you were like, let's say at the community college running like an evening business or marketing course, it would kind of follow a syllabus like that with topics. But they'd be taking and pulling from these to supplement their lessons and activities. So if they wanted a case study that enhanced on something that they were teaching in class, they would make that section visible to the students and use that as an assignment or activity.
On their iPad?
Yes.
Okay, just clarifying how we were going to use this.
Yep.
And it's fully paid for within our budget without a problem.
It's not even within our budget. It's within the grant budget, yes.
But in our total budget, it's
Yep.
it's not an issue in terms of looking for more money.
Nope.
And it's anticipated to be a positive use for the business department.
Absolutely.
Marketing.
Yes, business and marketing.
And you want our approval, or you just wanted to inform us?
We'd like your approval to purchase it. It is a supplemental resource. It's not really taking the place of what we normally do or overriding the curriculum, but we would like you to say that, you know, you would support our purchasing and using this resource. Yes.
I mean, it's a new pillow for my sofa kind of thing.
Nope.
A little bit more useful, perhaps. Sounds good to me.
Bill, do you have a question?
Yes, I was wondering, so what I saw the grant amount that you displayed there, and so that allows you to use the system since it's an online offering for 1 year, I assume?
Correct.
All right.
We'd be purchasing.
Go ahead.
I was just say, through Perkins, any vendor licensed product, there's a set period of time you could use it for. We could be getting the grant for 1 year. We could reapply to use it another year, but you have to have a plan in place if we could plan it to continue using it for eventually having Board of Ed finances cover it. I don't know that this is something that we will need once we have it as much of a need for once the students are back in person. I think we're looking to use this mostly to support our courses for the remainder of this year and as we begin next year, and maybe remediating some of the concepts that may have been missed or not covered as they normally would in the prior courses as we begin next year.
And we need 4 licenses.
Okay, so
4 instructors.
4 instructors. Okay.
Yeah, so this was a question basically following off of what Joyce was saying. So you want it as a supplement this year for I'm using that word, you didn't use it, but I'm using that word. And you're covering it basically with this grant that you have received for that purpose. You don't anticipate that you're going to come back and require it next year and make it a budget item, because it's more of a supplement again for the online teaching that is taking place currently.
Correct.
Yeah. Okay.
Now, you said 1 year or so. Would that be from
when we make the actual,
today?
we actually send the purchase order. So if we got approval and we put in the purchase order next week, when it becomes active, it would probably end in January of 2022.
22.
So it would be the first semester.
And if you were to incorporate this because of the year subscription, if you were to incorporate it next year in some capacity, but then it ends halfway through the school year, that's not going to impact anything for the second half of the school year, correct?
Through second half of the year,
2022.
the second half of the school year would not have access to it, but we certainly hope to be back in regular full instruction and not relying on our online resources as heavily as we do now. We still intend to use the iPad. These courses are technology heavy, right? But I don't think we would need as many tools to facilitate and begin the discussions online when we're back in person. It's a little bit easier to facilitate those and a little bit less time consuming when you're in person.
Right, so it would just pretty much take a back seat once in-person learning's fully resumed.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and there's no way to, I mean, it's through the grant, so there's no negotiating or anything when it comes to that, right, with the price or anything like that?
So the price, actually, we looked at the pricing. It's usually $1,895 per teacher. When they reached out, our coordinator reached out getting the pricing for it. The first teacher was $1,895, and then they got it for $395 for each additional teacher, which is how we got to that
Okay.
dollar amount, the $3,080.
Okay,
So there was a discount when we purchased more licenses.
And you'll let us
Significant
know
discount.
how well it fits into what you're using it for?
Yes.
Because it would be nice to find out if this works,
Yeah.
or is as useful as you're perceiving it.
Yeah, I think looking in it, it's really nice to see that it has a lot of the pre-built objectives, but I think more nice was all of the reference to actual business law cases in that course, some other references. So even if we don't use it, it at least points us in the direction, in the future, it at least points us in the direction of other resources that we could be looking at to like written resources or case studies to look at for our courses then.
Sounds good.
Not being intimately familiar with it, obviously. I mean, I'm becoming familiar with it today. But what seems appealing to me is the fact that it provides students with an opportunity. I think, an opportunity is the right word, to begin to do research and learning like you would do in college, because that's the way you describe it is pretty much that would follow, things that are just typical for you in college classes. So I think even if the content, it's not that great, the way that it's being used, it's not good.
Great. Yeah, I did like, and I noticed that same thing when I was looking through some of the views. It was very familiar, having done grad courses a few years ago, with the format of the syllabus and some of our activity guides for those. The way that they listed and linked the references in there to the case law and case studies. So you're right, it is very similar to the college format.
I was just gonna, to piggyback on that, I was about to say the same thing of recent college online courses I've taken, that the student example you gave in the presentation is almost identical to what you would see on a, as you're saying, on a college syllabus as well. So yeah, I think it's good for the 1 year while we're dealing with this kind of virtual world for a little bit longer. So
Sounds like no downside whatsoever. Yeah.
Great. All right. Well, thank you.
Thank you.
John, I have another question for
Sure.
you. Are you doing anything with Invention Convention this weird year?
We are not this year, no.
We debated it very heavily, Joyce.
We did several times, although it's very sad not to have that opportunity for the students. Our ability to support the students through that process was very limited. We usually have mentors and coaches who are very involved in taking and helping the students through the invention process and helping them get set up, practice their presentations. And we couldn't offer the same level of support to students and families virtually. We look to bring it back as soon as we are in back to a regular school functioning.
Whatever or whenever.
Whenever.
Next fall.
Hopefully next fall. I would like to be having our parent night early December like we always do to kick off right before break.
Yep.
Okay. Sad, but
John and
It's- It's happened with a number of things. Yeah, robotics, invention convention. It's been a interesting year.
Yeah. Anything else for Mr. Daig before he departs?
no, my next question's for you, Michelle.
Okay, bye, John.
All right, thank you. Have a good night.
You too.
Have we done any more review or thinking about the gifted and talented program?
Not in this time that we are in right now. No, we have not. We are, I know that part of the reason, I'll be honest, is I know that JFK was forming a committee to go and look at other programs. That's not possible right now. You can't go into other schools right now to talk to other teachers and discuss their programs. And I know that that's something that they wanted to do. They were going to do that last spring. So yes, that has kind of unfortunately been one of the things that's been put on hold at this point.
So we don't have a current group that is classified that way.
I don't know if that's necessarily true. I would think you know what, I'll have to check on that. I was under the impression it was continuing on as it had always been. It's not that it went away. It's just that the change, we had discussed enhancing and maybe making some changes. Those have not been done.
Okay, so
So
it's still
I will double check on that for you.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Absolutely. Mhm.
Alrighty, well,
May I say something? I just want to apologize to the whole team here because I was on a conference call from work that was expected to end at 5 and it got extended for an hour. I just couldn't get away from it. It had to do with financial audits, which is not my thing, but my team is involved in, and I just couldn't get away. So apologies to you guys.
We understand.
understandable.
Thank you.
Alrighty, well, if there's,
Does that mean that perhaps we should have our meetings later? 5:30 may have been too early?
Well, I mean, and typically I can make it work on days where I have these meetings here, and on the policy committee I can make 5:30 work. But this is something that I just couldn't anticipate. The call was expected to end at 5, and you can assume it was important because it was with Germany, and over there their time is 11 to 12. So again, it's just something I couldn't anticipate this time. It generally this time works okay for me.
perfect. Well, if there's no other items from the table, our next meeting will be 2 weeks from today, January 21st. And just a reminder that will be at Elkhorn.
And I understand it's to be in your office, Michelle?
I was just gonna say Kathy put that there, but I would still think that, because I believe I'm gonna have people coming again to present
Yes,
things.
it doesn't sound like it would be space.
So we'll go downstairs again. So I will, I'll let you all know, but when she sends out the agenda, I'll have her change the location. I think it'll be in the room it was in last time, so we can spread out again.
Okay,
Okay?
yes, that alerted me immediately. Thank you for,
It alerted me too, but that, yeah, so I'm on it.
thanks.
No problem.
Very good. Alrighty,
Move to adjourn.
second in.
Come on, Bill, second it.
Yeah, no, I did.
Alrighty, guys. Well, that's a good meeting. I enjoyed all the presentations. So again, thank you for you know, putting all that together, and I
Problem.
look forward to January 21st.
Absolutely. See you in a couple weeks. Happy New Year, everyone.
Yeah, same to
Happy
you.
New Year to
Bye, guys.
everybody. Bye-bye.